Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diverse Goddess. It's Hannah, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about and going over how to become emotionally and mentally stronger. So keep watching. Okay, so how do we become emotionally and mentally stronger? And I put them together because I feel they are interconnected. You can't have one without the other. And a lot of people try to separate them and think they're two separate things. They think our mentality is separate from our feelings, and they tend to not give a lot of importance to their feelings. Well, I look at it as one because if you take a bird, for example, a bird cannot fly unless both wings are equally strong. And so that's why I put them together, because our feelings dictate how we think. And I've said this in other videos where the body holds emotions. Well, it's your body that first gets the signals of feelings. It's your body that first receives the feelings. And then once your body receives it, it goes to your brain, and then your brain interprets it, and that's what causes your thoughts. So your feelings are direct reflection of your thought process. Furthermore, I want to break it down into feminine, masculine energy. Some people will see the emotional side as being the feminine side, which it is, and also the mentality side as being the masculine side. And even the word mentality, it's mentality. So you have to have both energies together to come together to be in balance, to feel strong. And like I used the bird analogy before, both wings have to be equally strong for the bird to fly. So that's why I'm combining the two in one video. So it's a relationship, so both are interconnected and working together. So if our body is the one that's feeling everything and our brain just interprets it, whatever we are feeling is what dictates our thoughts. So if we're having thoughts of sadness, anger, depression, anxiety, or even happiness, our thoughts get flooded with those feelings. Our thoughts, or our thought process, the words that we say to ourselves, come directly from those feelings. And unfortunately, we tend to live in a society that tends to reject the emotional side of life or the sensitivities of life, and we label them as weak or unimportant, and therefore we tell ourselves that they're not important, and we tell ourselves that we're weak if we have feelings. But unfortunately, they suppress you more, and they're going to run your life even more if you reject them. So the first thing we have to do is stop saying that they're unimportant and stop saying that they're weak, because if they're channeled correctly, it can actually make you very strong. I want to help you channel your feelings in the right way so you can be more balanced and more stable. And also on this channel, we're all about giving importance to the unconscious so you can be unsuppressed and thriving and be your best self. I like to look at feelings or thoughts as just clouds that are blocking your sun. So, and we all have them. So we are going to start removing those clouds that are blocking your sun. So the first step in becoming more emotionally and mentally stronger is that we want to get to know ourselves. We want to face that person in the mirror that we see every single day and get to know them so we can be our own best friend and not a stranger. And how we get to know ourselves, we can start very basic. Let's just start with the things that, what are the things that you like? What are the things that you don't like? What are some of your strengths? What are some of your weaknesses? And once we can start identifying things that we don't like, things that we like, where our strengths are, we can highlight our strengths, and then we can start working on the things that we feel are not as strong. We also have to learn to get to know ourselves so we can have our own opinions, so we can have our own thoughts, so we can own our own thinking and become our own people. And becoming your own person, you have to get to know yourself. Knowing yourself fully leads to knowing where your boundaries are. And once you can learn to set boundaries or healthy boundaries, you'll be able to notice when people start crossing them, and you can start standing up for yourself even more, and you can start having more say over who's in your life and who's not in your life, what makes you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good, because you've set up healthy boundaries, because you identified where those boundaries are. If you've ever played basketball, for example, you know when the ball is out of bounds, because the lines are clearly drawn. The boundary lines are clearly drawn. So when that ball goes out of bounds, you know it. When we know ourselves, we then get to realize and know our value. And then we start acting, thinking, feeling, moving according to our value. And if we know ourselves, it leads me to my second thing, which is we can evolve past our egos. So what does it mean to evolve past our ego? Some of the common feelings that we associate with having an ego is feelings of arrogance, entitlement, a superiority complex, righteousness, being cocky, right? And some of you might be thinking, well, I have very low self-esteem. I don't have an ego issue. Well, unfortunately, even if you have low self-esteem, that's also the result of ego. You see a person who's very arrogant and cocky and a feeling of entitlement and all those things that are usually associated with common ego is actually overcompensation. They are actually hiding their feelings of insecurity and inadequacy. And somebody with low self-esteem is actually undercompensating. So it's the same ego, just on different ends of the spectrum. And we as people were not intended to feel less than or depressed or overly cocky and arrogant. We were intended to be balanced and confident. So we want to find that middle ground feeling where we are humble enough not to be depressed and love ourselves enough where it doesn't translate into arrogance. So how do we start to get over our egos? Well, we first have to be aware and notice when that little guy has invaded our space. If we have feelings of anger, if we start feeling feelings of sadness or depression, or we start hating ourselves and other people, and we get into a space of fuck everything in life and fuck myself and everybody else too, that's when you know that little guy has started to invade your space. When you can pause and recognize when those thoughts have taken over, you can then start to release those feelings, and those thoughts will start to dissipate. Moving past the ego, especially when we start to either feel maybe offended by somebody or a situation, or we start reacting to something in not a positive way, it's important to understand that other people are allowed to have their opinions. Other people are allowed to think and feel how they wish, and how other people think and feel have very little to do with you and has more to do with themselves. And so once we can understand that that's okay, we can start to let that go. And like in my first step where I said get to know yourself, once you get to know yourself and you have a strong sense of who you are, it is very hard for other people to sway how you feel or to question your value or to make you feel shitty, because you have such a strong sense of who you are. That's why that's important. Like, for example, like if someone wanted to believe that I'm a shitty person, like deep down I know that that's not true. But let's say they gave me an example of something of like, oh, well, you did this or something. I can get over my ego enough to take in constructive feedback if it's constructive. And if I feel that they have a point, I can then work on it. See, people can also help you to identify perhaps where your ego is or where there are areas to grow. That's okay. But if you feel like someone's just like, oh, you're just a shitty person and I don't like you, and that it's really not justified, then that's just a person being a hater, and you can let that go because deep down you know who you are, and that's what's most important. And again, when you know who you are, it's very hard to have other people have say over how you feel. Because like, for another example, like if someone were to be like, oh, Hannah has blonde hair, and I know without a shadow of a doubt I don't have blonde hair, so I can let that go. If someone was like, oh, well, Hannah's a white person, I'm definitely not a white person. That I know 100% to be true. So when you know yourself, you know what's 100% truth, and you don't have to justify it, you don't have to prove it, because it speaks for yourself. And once you know that to be solid, you can start letting things go, and people and situations in life do not, make you feel like a little marionette puppet pulling you all over the place. You start to feel more stable because your inner core is solid. Some people, they might start to feel like, oh, well, maybe I am a shitty person, I'm not that great. Because I think deep down sometimes people feel like maybe that is the truth. Maybe I'm not a good person. Maybe I'm not that talented. Maybe I'm not that smart. Maybe I'm not that good, whatnot. But again, when you know yourself, you know what you are and you know what you're not. And I also have to remind you that you weren't born because life was like, let's have this shitty ass person roam the earth. And yes, I know we have sociopaths and we have narcissists, running amok on the planet, but that's a different topic altogether. But I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you're not either one. So you really have nothing to worry about. You're just a person that maybe is struggling, and that doesn't make you a bad person. That just makes you a human. Getting to know yourself and evolving past your ego is just a process like anything. It's like cleaning out your closet. When we clean out our closet, we start to look at things that we can keep, things we want to get rid of, and the ego is one that we can put in the little bag of things that we've outgrown. And that's all we really can do as people, is we can just grow. It's not about judging yourself if you start to see that your ego is running amok with you. It's just being able to be aware of it, because in that awareness, it automatically dissipates on its own. Which then brings me to my third tip, which is be gentle on yourself and others. If you want to learn how to be emotionally and mentally stronger, you have to learn to be more gentle on yourself and stop beating yourself up for every little thing. Because even beating yourself up is a part of ego. And I think sometimes we think, well, if we're hard on ourselves or if we beat ourselves up, it makes it look like we're self-sacrificing. I think we confuse it with like, look at how humble I am because I'm so hard on myself. Look at how unselfish I am because I'm able to, beat myself up. Also, we may think if we're hard on ourselves or beat ourselves up, it makes it so you don't have to. Again, ego is about protection. So if we feel like someone doesn't like us, for example, it makes us feel less hurt because we're like, well, I don't like myself anyway. So sometimes it's a coping mechanism to make it easier and less hurtful by people or by life. Furthermore, you don't have to like every single thing about you, but it's not okay to hate yourself because of those things. We all have things that we could work on. We all have areas that we wish we could improve, but that doesn't make you a bad person. Why do you need to hate whatever it is that you need to work on? Just work on it. Like, you might not be the fastest runner in the world, but you can go to the gym and start running. And you will grow at your own pace. I mean, let's say you've gained a lot of weight and you don't like that. That's okay. You don't have to like that. But knowing yourself, you know what you're capable of, and you know that you're capable of changing those things. It's not a problem. So there is no reason for you to start having negative self-talk to yourself because of those things. So that's what I'm trying to say. But let's say you're not the depressed person. Let's say you're the one who doesn't internalize it, because that's what depression is when you internalize negative feelings. Let's say you're the opposite. Maybe you externalize those feelings. Maybe you're the one who pokes at everybody else. Maybe you're the one who says nasty things to other people or emotionally abusive to other people. That's also a coping mechanism, because sometimes if we're like, oh, well, I'll start pointing the finger at this person and that person, and if I bully this person, then they won't bully me. Or if I point out this person's flaws, then they won't be looking at our flaws. Again, that's also a form of protection. If I look at other people's, they won't be looking at me. But here on my channel, we are about looking inward and not outward, so we can become better people for ourselves, and also so we can be better people and show up as our best selves for others. So learning to be gentle with ourselves helps us to be gentle with other people, so we can become more understanding and understand that we're not all perfect, but we are all trying to grow as well, and we all have our own struggles, we all have our own stories, we all have our own things that we're dealing with. But instead of adding, I always say, instead of trying to add to people's pain, let's start adding to people's healing. And so by adding to people's healing, it starts with being gentle. So when we are gentle, our thoughts get stronger. So that brings me to my final tip number 4, on how you can become stronger emotionally and mentally is that it's just through diet and exercise. And I'm not going to go into a complete detail on diet and exercise in this video because I'm going to do a completely different video on diet alone, which will be foods create moods, because what you eat does dictate and can affect how you feel, which then affect your thoughts. And so I am just going to kind of leave it there. And in my last video, I talked about how exercise, because our feelings get trapped in our body, exercise and movement helps release those energies because we're moving it and we're moving it out of our body. And so obviously diet, because if you're eating crappy foods, that goes into our body, it goes into our cells, and then those cells give signals to the brain, which then give us thoughts. So if you're eating crappy foods, expect to feel crappy and expect your thoughts to be crappy. So on that note, what did we learn today? We learned that we have to get to know ourselves. We have to evolve past our ego. We have to be more gentle on ourselves and others. And then we have to be more aware and actually care about our diet and exercise. So with that said, I'm going to end this video. And I hope that this video was helpful. And if you felt that the information in this video could benefit somebody else, feel free to share it. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And I will see you again soon in my next video. Bye.